So real quick tonight, let me let one in. Tonight is session number 100. And so I was going to run through a couple things. So number 100, we started September 12th of 2020. We are just shy of 70,000 website visitors in the last 2 years. Sent freaking thousands and thousands of stickers around the world, not just the US. Just shy of 1,700 different users have signed on since meeting number 1, which is pretty cool. I have 1,700 different emails. Of course, 99 archive weeks on the website, and we've had 64 different speakers in 99 weeks. So it is fantastic. I love it. Centennial birthday. That's awesome. So tonight's presentation was actually going to be Dr. Nettleman, and he had a safety presentation. He emailed this morning that he had a bunch of stuff come up today and wasn't going to be able to do it. And so Rob presented in October a safety presentation that actually did not end up getting recorded. And so we kind of get to do a do-over with Rob safety, and this time we'll get it recorded and ready to go. So I will turn it over to you, Mr. Rob. I appreciate it as always, your time.
All right.
And all other
happy to be
64s. Yeah.
Great to see the attendees in person. I imagine we're going to have quite a few more watching this at some other point. With that, I'll just jump right into sharing my screen, figure out which one I'm going to share. And
I did wear my orange polo.
Look right to you.
You're good. I wore my orange polo today because it was safety.
Oh, good. So, all right, as you can see, October 3rd was when we did the unrecorded presentation. And as we all know, land surveying takes teamwork. So let's work together and set our sights on land surveying safety. This is what I'd like to cover, and your input is needed now and, of course, in the future. All right. And why do we have to talk about safety? Well, we got to think about safety first. If we're not talking about safety, we're not thinking about it. These are some of the reasons we should be talking and thinking about safety. And we're also, some of us are licensed, and we're licensed to protect the public, but the public also includes our staff and our colleagues. There's a great article by TJ Lyons at the link in the lower right corner. Not only do we need to know what to do, but why we do it. And man, that's a truism for many. Okay, we're back on there, Trent. It's our professional responsibility to help our industry work more safely. So one of the things that you have to recognize is risk management. So you have to identify the risks, analyze your business exposure. We're talking about safety, but you could also consider the risks that you face with error analysis, litigation, other procedural type things for your business, but just the things that put us at risk, right? So best case is avoiding risks, eliminating the exposure. If you don't need to put yourself at risk, then don't. Reducing risks is trying to control what you can. Promote safe workplace, require safety training and equipment, use that equipment, incorporate your risk control measures of some sort. if you transfer risks, normally this means insurance. But from a surveying perspective, transferring risk could also be contracting out more dangerous aspects of your work. Trent mentioned that I worked for the city of Escondido and many years ago, and the city engineer came to talk to our party chief and said, hey, we need you to do this topo at this particular location for realignment of the road there. Going to do a widening and realignment and such. And how busy is your schedule looking? And the chief was always willing to step up when the city engineer was asking. Well, we can work it in. We'll try and find some time to do it. And the city engineer said, we got a letter from one of the property owners that in response to the city sending out a letter saying surveyors would be in the neighborhood in the next few weeks, that if any city surveyors showed up on his property, he'd shoot them. And my boss, being the pretty sharp guy that he was, said, our schedule's looking pretty heavy these days. Maybe we could consult that out to one of the private firms. And that's what we did. So we actually transferred that risk off to another firm. And of course, you retain the risk that you can't transfer. So you just have to recognize them and do your best to mitigate that situation. And then, of course, at the end of whatever your risk that you're trying to manage, the situation you're trying to manage, you got to look back, monitor the program, evaluate the program. How did you do on that? Did you move forward with a successful outcome, or were there lessons to be learned? So, can you identify a risk here? Anybody? Is anybody still there?
Anyone? A risk, so you just have it just says risk management. I don't know if you have a screen going.
Oops, sorry.
Oh,
How about there?
There you go. Okay, cool. Now
All right.
somebody can.
There's a tripod set up where they're going to be dumping the load.
Yeah, you got that right. This isn't the same place, but it's the same end result that could be happening. I never had to make this phone call to my bosses over the years. And that would be an uncomfortable conversation to have. So, right. Some common safety concerns that we got to be concerned about. Anytime you're working around traffic, construction equipment, bugs and bunnies and other creatures that might bite or sting or be irritating, weather, and unstable surfaces and heights, remote locations, even weather extremes. It doesn't have to be that hot or that cold to really cause a problem. Particularly if you're not used to working in the current conditions. Back when I was a fairly young pup at Caltrans in the early 90s, was working on a big construction project, and all of a sudden we heard a lot of sirens and a lot of contractors like superintendent and foreman trucks going in a real hurry to the east end of the project, where we were working on the west end of a big highway project. and it was just coming up on noon. It was about 90 degrees out. One of the laborers had collapsed at the other end of the site. He had just come down from working in Oregon and wasn't used to working in 90-degree temperatures. And most of us kind of shrugged that off, like 90 degrees is, you know, kind of a day at the beach for us. But he wasn't used to it. He was trying to keep up with the guys that were, and he went into heat stroke and was DOA at the hospital. So keep an eye on yourselves, but definitely keep an eye on others. I mentioned traffic, and there are things that you can control and there are things that you can't. So you got to evaluate the risk. And part of that includes the drive to or from the site. With the people on the highways these days, I don't know if you guys are seeing this, but with the big shutdowns en masse in 2020 and 2021, with the highways being open, you know, no traffic whatsoever, speeds went way up, and it doesn't seem like a lot of people have reduced their speed of their commute, of their driving. And I think they're probably worse driving now than before the pandemic, really. These are things, like I said, you could control these, right? Don't be a part of the problem. Don't be distracted or impaired. And definitely drive defensively. Like I said, people drive too fast at times. And anybody have any idea how fast the crash testing is for most vehicles?
I'm going to say 35, just the way you asked the question.
That is correct. Either 35 or 40, depending on where they're done the testing. But 35 is a typical number. And if we remember back to, I don't know, maybe somebody's had a physics class, that energy increases with the square of the velocity. So the energy in a 70-mile-per-hour impact is 4 times the energy of that same object in a 35-mile-per-hour impact. And despite you feeling like you're somewhat indestructible in a 3/4 ton pickup, that's not always the case. This 3/4 ton pickup hit a parked grader or blade alongside the freeway that was being used to basically do weed control of the median. I don't know if you can see this very well, but to the right side of the screen is the rear of the bed. The whole left side of the bed is sheared off. All the way to the left side of the screen, I'm not even sure what the heck that is over there. But this was a 3/4 ton pickup truck. So in the test of vehicle versus relatively immobile object, typically the immobile object is going to win. So there are going to be things that you can't control, right? Can you close the road? Can you set up appropriate signs and cones? Can you use a different method to perform the work? Can you park a vehicle in a protective location? Can you use the buddy system? Somebody, if you're out on foot near traffic, somebody always has to be watching traffic. And that's from 20 years of well, 15 years of working in Caltrans in the field, and another 15 years of worrying about my staff that are working in the field. So using a different method, you know, deploying technology to change out how you're doing things. I signed off on the purchase of mobile laser scanners for Caltrans. And specifically because my people were at risk without that technology available. So when you're out on foot, watch and listen for changes in the traffic sounds. Be aware of what's going on and be ready to change the plan as necessary. An interesting way to deploy technology is using Waze. One of our crews that was based in Santa Cruz started using Waze when it first came out. And would give drivers a little recognition that something different was happening. So remember I mentioned buddy system and having a lookout. Two people are usually better than one, but can you see something wrong with this picture?
Neither are looking at traffic.
Yeah, the guy that's supposed to be looking at traffic is looking down, watching the other one.
Exactly.
And that happens. It's a natural reaction to watching what the other person is doing. So there's the California manual on uniform traffic control devices, which is got some modifications to it compared to the Federal Highway Administration, MUTCD. There are specific signs and you know, those should be used to warn of crews working in or adjacent to the roadway. There's closures, sign and cone patterns for closures for working in the center lane of a road with traffic, and those are low volume roads. And then, of course, all of this stuff that is too small to read is all the stuff about the notes, the guidance notes that go with the previous slide. So if you don't know where to find this, you can look this up online. I believe I had a link in the first slide on this. So
The other comments to them looking in the manholes was yeah, no cones, no
right.
extra peeps, no flaggers, no cones.
Right. Here's a good one coming. What's the safety concern here? Hopefully that wasn't the first notice that you had that the road was closed.
Just a dead.
Just a squared off hand, you know. And then of course, I think we've all had this happen a time or two. Right. And always plenty of risk on construction sites. smaller sites, you might not have traffic patterns and haul roads, but you still have working areas and that sort of thing. There's plenty of things to be concerned about around a construction site, even a small site. And I know Trent's big on statistics. So here's some statistics from 2005 through 2010, roadway construction worker fatalities. Nice thing is it was going down every year since 2005, or it shows a percent change down from 2005. Looked like there was a lot of focus in 6 and 7, and then it actually bounced back up again from the previous year in 2009, then dropped off again. And if you can see the primary causes were usually runovers or backovers. Often dump trucks, they can't see what's behind them. If you're on a site and a truck does not have a backup beeper, get off the site. Talk to the foreman about it. Now, I don't think that small trucks like pickup trucks are required to have them. On our 1-ton survey vehicles at Caltrans, we had backup beakers. Collisions between vehicles and other equipment, and caught in between or struck by construction equipment and objects is another 14%. So
I just went and grabbed some of the current stats. So highway worker occupational fatalities and road construction sites in 2020 was 135, and in 119, no, we're in 135 in 2019 and 117 in 2020.
Yeah, so we're still losing 100 people a year. Which it's too many. 2011 through 2016, there were 532 people killed. So keep your eyes open. And I don't know how many of you out there are working as a solo operator. If you're running solo on a construction site, man, plan your work to be there when they're gone, either before they start or after they're done for the day. Or have somebody come and help you on those sites, because we want you to be back here next Monday. So, and numbers of fatalities and rate per 100,000 full-time equivalent employees. So the crossing guards, the sign holders, you think that's an easy job, but 41 out of 100,000 were fatal injuries in that 5-year span. A lot of laborers were killed, but hey, the bright side is there are a lot of laborers on the job site. So as a rate number, it's very low. You got very few crossing guards or flaggers on a site, typically one at each end of a project. So the numbers of them getting killed show up high in the rate. So haul roads are a big deal on heavy sites. And it may not always be left turns like Trent has to deal with when he's out driving his NASCAR. In this case, it's right-hand turns They go up and around the site, up and off to the upper right corner and circle around. One of the things that during my career, when we'd pull into a site, a project site, we'd stop and just take a quick look and make sure that the haul road traffic is going the direction we want it to, because we really didn't want to be playing chicken with one of these. My personal rule about playing chicken is, if the truck is so big that they have to use a staircase to get in and out, I don't play chicken with those guys. They've got a lot of inertia and not much in the way of braking. It's great brakes for what they are, but when they're fully loaded, they pretty much can't stop like you would hope they could. Visibility is pretty limited, so they may turn and not see you. And there may be by the load incentives that the truck drivers are trying to make. So if you're concerned about somebody trying to make his Amazon deliveries in a little Ford Transit van, this is about 100 times worse. And the construction equipment, you got to make eye contact with the operators and really be aware of where they're going, and make sure that their path and your path do not come to an inauspicious intersection. Sometimes a scraper will be pushed by another scraper or a dozer like Caterpillar. So even if they wanted to stop, they may be getting pushed, and they are not able to stop because somebody else is pushing behind them. So these are definitely dangerous and very high inertia vehicles. They can, when they're actually up and loaded and rolling from one part of the job site to another, they can move quite quickly. And again, so much inertia, they're not going to stop very fast. And trenches and shoring. If you don't need to be in a trench, don't go there. If you can do something else to get the information that you need to get, perfect. Do it that way. Stay back from edges of trenches. If a trench is over 5 feet deep, law requires it to be shored. Anybody see any problem with this? Or how about this one? Right. A lot of bad stuff can happen there. Cranes and pile drivers. My personal thoughts on cranes and pile drivers is stay the hell away. If there's a 100-foot crane operating, I want to stay at least 150 feet away from it. And if you want to know why, you can look up on YouTube the Big Blue Crane. There's a 1 minute and 16-second video that puts it all in perspective. And there are more videos if you want to get more explanation of what happened. Snags, trips, and impalements. So snags are things that cause you to either get caught on, get hooked on something, or get caught up. So the nails sticking out of plywood forms, string line wires when they're doing paving, those are snags and trip hazards. Does everybody know what an impalement is?
Happens if you don't have a cute little orange square on top of a rebar.
Yeah, you got it. Rebar with that's protruding out of concrete without those orange safety caps. That's a pure recipe for an impalement. Those are the little orange safety caps that Trent mentioned. And that's impalement. Okay. So we don't want that to happen. Bugs, bunnies, and nasty weeds. Okay. All these different things, right? And most of the animals and the insects, until they're a problem for you, you probably don't even see them. But animals are watching us when we're out there. And how do we know? Because sometimes they imitate us. Okay. And of course, bees can be a hazard. Like this whole swarm that decided they wanted to attack the instrument. I'm not sure where the instrument person's gone, but hopefully they cleared the area quickly. Well, poison oak, poison sumac, poison ivy, nettles, oleander, mushrooms, cactus, century plants, foxglove, lantana, lupin, angel's trumpet. Those are all of these. Yeah, poison ivy is particularly dangerous. These cactus, I swear, will throw their spines at you if you even get close. I don't know how they do it. Doesn't seem like you get that close to them, and next thing you know, you got thorns in your leg.
George said he actually worked on a job where work ended because of mosquitoes.
Wow.
Giant hogweed causes nasty burns, according to Sean.
All right. This is on the left is a century plant. When I was young and dumb and not even surveying yet, I went over to help my friend whose mom needed us to do some, we were high school age. His mom needed some landscaping done. And one of the things was to get rid of the century plant that was there. And we started out whacking it with like machetes to try and cut into it. And my buddy got the great idea to use the electric chainsaw. And it turns out that the doing this in shorts and tank tops was not the best idea any of us ever had. And the sap from the century plant is extremely unpleasant. Particularly with as much exposed skin as we had going on. That's foxglove, which is quite pretty, but poisonous. And then lantana and lupin. I think lupin, is that the Colorado state flower? There's angel's trumpet, also a nasty one. So. Sunburn. Hey, everybody, use sunscreen. And if you want to see why, go to the californiasurveyors.org and look up the Cal Surveyor magazine, issue number 160. And quite an interesting article on our buddy Jay Seymour, who has presented on this location before, and his experience with skin cancer. Already mentioned temperature extremes. Drink plenty of water. Stop for shade if you can. Trent, how much water do your field staff use out in Las Vegas in the summertime?
Yeah, they go through 5-gallon buckets a day, pretty much, right? Every morning, filling them up with ice and water. So
Yeah, so that's 2 guys, 5 gallons.
yeah, easily.
Yeah, plus whatever else they take along, right?
Exactly. Plus, yeah, Gatorades or whatever, right? So
Yeah, I found working in the Imperial Valley down south of Palm Springs in the summertime that I was going through 3.5 gallons a day on my own. And it still wasn't enough. So can be pretty nasty out there. Cold, we don't deal with it too much out here in Southern California, but I mean, it's possible we can go places and get cold. And that's one of those things that can happen to you if you're out and you get stuck somewhere. The desert is an insidious place for temperature extremes, where you might have 80 or 90 degrees on a nice spring day in the high desert. If you get stuck out somewhere, temperature can drop into the 40s or down into the 30s or even lower overnight. My brother was visiting me last week, and as we got back to the house, he said, how cold is it going to get tonight? And I said, oh, I don't know, maybe 40. And when I went out to the car the next morning, our vehicles were just covered with ice, which you don't think about that happening in the desert when it's not raining, not snowing. It just so much temperature extreme variation for the day that if you got stuck out, you could be in a world of hurt. So one of the things that, I mean, if you're going to be going on a pretty extensive hike to retrace some boundary or something, where you're going to be out away from civilization, or maybe you're doing some geodetic work where you're going to have to hike up to the top of a small peak or something to place your receiver, you might want to take the chance of carrying one of those little Mylar emergency blankets in your vest and keep an eye on what the weather's doing, because it can change quickly, particularly at altitude. You could end up with rain, lightning, and even wildfire. I mentioned California, or mentioned drinking water, and California actually has laws about how much water you're required to carry. So 1 quart per person per hour of scheduled work in California for field work, or a written plan to replenish the supply, and you follow the written plan if the temperature is greater than 95 degrees Fahrenheit. You got to be communicating. You got to be able to contact a supervisor if necessary, and supervisor or buddies got to keep an eye on each other, and remind people to drink water. And what are your company's safety standards for work? Working at heights, you want to eliminate the risk and get appropriate training. Like I said, if you don't need to be there, don't go there. Fall protection, fall restraint system, fall arresting system. All of this stuff is stuff to help you when you do fall. One of my students, when I taught in Southern California in San Diego, was a high steel worker, and he was taking a survey class to learn about survey and maybe not be a high steel worker anymore. And he called me on a Friday evening, and he said he wouldn't be in class the next day, a Saturday class in the lab. It was a 6-hour lecture in lab altogether. Because he had fallen from the 6th floor of a building they were building. He didn't expect to be working on the high steel that day. So he had his boots that didn't have a good tread on them. Somebody else called in sick, or for whatever reason, the boss needed him to go up and work on the 6th floor. And he got close to the edge and went off. As he fell, he windmilled his arms, and he caught one arm on the 5th floor as he was going by. Swung under because he was able to hook his arm, and landed on his back on the floor surface of the 4th floor. If he hadn't caught the 5th floor, he would have gone to the ground. So if you're going to be up high, have appropriate footwear, right? And they didn't have a fall restraint system. They didn't have a fall arrest system. I don't know if they had a fall rescue procedure, but he ended up in the hospital for a couple days. And the good footwear, essential. You ought to know all of this stuff before you go up high. So one question that I found out from a friend of mine who was a emergency room nurse and later became nurse practitioner is how high up is considered trauma at the ER. So if you fall from a 6-story building, obviously that's trauma. But the ER considers a fall from your own height. So if you're 6 feet tall and you fall from something 6 feet high, you're going to go to the trauma ward. Okay. Now look at this picture. That's an amazing tripod they've got there. But my question is, the guy with the data collector, the survey controller, whatever, is on a step stool of some sort. But what's that step stool on? And here, this one's for the Darwin Awards on the right side. But I got to give the guy credit. At least he has eye protection, which is one of my pet peeves. But he's working with an electric drill on an aluminum ladder, barefoot, and the extension cord is running through the water of the swimming pool that the ladder is set up on. So you've got to have some common sense somewhere. Trent, does your team ever work in remote locations?
Yeah, to some degree. I mean, right? It depends on the project, but I mean, not as much anymore, I would say, but
Yeah. There's this is some info from Dewberry, their surveyor safety handbook. Pre-plan the work and communicate the plan. Let people know where you're going. And then check in and check out. You know, if and is there cell service on the site? There might not be, but there might be 10 miles from the site as you roll up to it. And the plan might be that, hey, you call Trent, you know, Trent's staff calls him, hey, we're 10 minutes out from the job site. We're going to lose cell service here, but we're going in now. We should call you by 4 p.m. And they go in and they do their work, and they should come out and give him a call from that same location about 4 p.m.
on
If
that,
he doesn't,
yeah, I was gonna say on that note, Rob, we did do all that border work and we had actual satellite phones for that kind of stuff. So good point.
right,
Good point.
that's
Yep.
great. And you know, we don't think about them when we have such glorious summertime days, but right now we're in the short days of winter, and it just seems to me when you're out there working on a project site that sun starts to move faster from about 2:30 till dark. All of a sudden it just drops right off the side, the flat edge of the earth, you know. So you got to take that into account. A number of years ago, there were a couple of surveyors in Southern California. I believe it was in December, and they were working on the side of a mountain near Palomar Mountain, and they worked their way up on the project, and then were coming back down towards their vehicle, and they got in a bind, and they couldn't, like, they lost the trail down, and it got dark on them, and they didn't have things to deal with working in the dark or ways to figure out where the trail was. So they ended up calling 911, and the sheriff's department vectored in a helicopter, and luckily they were working with GPS, so they figured out what their, you know, autonomous GPS location was, and the helicopter couldn't find them because by the time they scrambled the copter, fog had rolled in and covered them up. So they had to just get on the cell phone and say, yes, you're over us now. And the helicopter ended up dropping thermal blankets and water and food for them. And they had to spend the night on the side of the hill and hike their way out the next day. So it was the short days of winter that snuck up on them. How's your vehicle equipped? Right? How can you maintain communications either between crew members or between crews? And of course, dress appropriately. The last issue is what their problem was they got into some really steep or impassable terrain. So have your right tools with you. Sometimes you need a little fancy paracord bracelet, or a multi-tool. All kinds of things that other hazards. So how often do you use chisels or gads, and how often do you check them for spalls or mushrooms? If you're pounding a gad and one of those spalls, those mushrooms pieces, comes off of there. I don't know from personal experience, but one of my good friends and former coworkers took one to the upper thigh, and when he got to the hospital, they thought he had been shot by a .22 rifle. So it went in pretty far and was not in the least pleasant. And of course, you better be using eye protection if you're using any of these tools, right? Cutting tools, got to be sharp. Hammerheads, got to make sure they're attached securely. And where is the branch that you're cutting going to fall? Or where is the tree that you're cutting going to fall?
On that hammerhead, Rob, if we pound in PK nails into the top to make sure it's snug, is that still good?
You'd have to check your company op specs on that, Trent, but I'd say probably not.
How many survey trucks have PK nails all over the head of their hammer? That's what I want to know.
Probably too many. And when I was brand new, I ended up with a roofing hatchet for my hammering, my belt hammering tool. And you know, it was like, yeah, go into the warehouse and find yourself some kind of hammer. And the only thing that had some mass to it that seemed pretty cool was this old roofing hatchet. And at one point, my party chief was standing directly in line with me driving a Guinea into some sub base setting blue tops back in the day. And at one point, I hit the Guinea, and as I came back up, the hatchet head came off of the handle, and it went sailing right between the boss's legs. And I think out of just pure reaction, he just like jumped up onto his toes as tall as he could go. And he wasn't, shall we say, an agile person, but luckily it just missed any, delicate portions of his anatomy. So you definitely make sure those are attached securely. If you're working near and on water, all these things are issues that can be a problem, right? And what do you see that's wrong with this?
Certainly seems like he could have been standing the other direction.
You know, that's about the only thing. And it looks like what he's got below him is a bunch of riprap, which can be unpleasant at least to step on, but certainly unpleasant if you fell on it. And in this one, it looks worse than this is, but it's still not good, right? These guys are two guys standing up and the third guy rowing this boat, but luckily this is a drift boat. So the guy with the rover pole, he's actually leaning against a little contraption that drift boats have that you kind of lock your legs into as you're fishing. It's a little rowing fishing boat. And the guy in the back has got the same kind of thing, and he's locked in also. So this looks worse than it is, but there are better ways of doing this. Now, this I don't think is the better way, but at least he's got an immersion suit. So while this looks really uncomfortable, he's probably not as cold as you think he is. But what about using one of these? Then you wouldn't have anybody in the boats, right? And you'd probably be getting a much more accurate product, at least more detailed. So anyway, that's about it for that part of working around water. But has anybody heard of the Larissa M? I know some of our guys have worked up in the Alaska area, and they probably know Chuck Aiken. And this is a story about Chuck Aiken and his crew. So they were working on an uninhabited island, which there are some of those up in the Aleutian Island chain. And this photo is not the Larissa M, but probably a quite a bit larger fishing boat, but give you the general concept. The Larissa M was a 50-foot fishing boat, and that was their liveaboard. So they had a captain and a cook, and the survey party would be shuttled to the islands that they had to survey on in a 15-foot skiff with an outboard motor. And the story goes that Friday was spent moving the survey crew along along an island, an uninhabited island from the fishing boat Larissa M. The closest port is Adak, 120 miles east. Adak is 1,300 miles northwest of Anchorage. So let's look at that on a map. Just to give you kind of a understanding of where these guys were working, they were down in the area that's near this Amchitka Island. So they were closer to Russia than to really any major US city. Okay. Remote is kind of a liberal term to be using for this, in my estimation. So at 3 p.m., the captain and the cook motored through howling winds and 12-foot waves towards the shore to pick up the survey crew. These were the only two guys on the fishing boat. Presumably, the cook could have handled the skiff, but why he didn't take it alone, I don't know. Why the captain thought it was a good idea for both of them to go, I don't know. But they did. And if you don't know what a skiff, a 15-foot skiff in 12-foot waves look like, it's something like this. So not exactly a pleasure cruise, but certainly more like a 3-hour tour. So the skiff hit a submerged rock and the motor died. But they got oars. But they're in 12-foot waves, and the wind was howling, and it started pushing their skiff towards a reef. So locally, they rode like hell and got the skiff around the rocks and clear of the reef. Well, what's the problem with that? Is once they were clear of the reef, the wind and the current took the skiff and the cook and the captain out to sea. The skiff was the only boat besides their fishing boat that was there. And so the captain was able to, by walkie-talkie, was able to reach the survey crew. And his last message was, someone has to get to the Larissa M and radio for help. Well, the Larissa M is offshore because that's why they're using the skiff. And the water temperature up there is, I don't know, but I think pretty damn cold, has to be close to the best guess. And if the survey crew can get to the ship, do they know how to operate the ship's radio? Right. Well, this was the captain's thoughts. He believed the crew would be able to cobble something together to reach the fishing boat. They're a pretty resourceful group. So how about this? Fashion a raft out of boards that are washed up on the beach, crab buoys, hold it together with fishing net and use some other wood for oars, and paddle their way out to Larissa M 10:30 p.m. Saturday. So by this time, you're looking at coming up on 32 hours since the captain and the cook went adrift. It was another 20 hours later when the captain and cook were rescued by the Coast Guard. So they spent 52 hours adrift, more than 2 solid days. So think about how bad something can get. The possibilities are there when you think everything's just possibly just going along smoothly. But there's a chance when you're working in some place like this that things can go from bad to worse to oh no in a real hurry. So one of the things we probably don't think about a lot is soil and airborne threats. Pictured here is a surveyor from the Sacramento area when there were fires burning all around Northern California. He took this selfie and sent it to me. There's all kinds of nasty stuff out there. If you haven't heard of valley fever, it's a particularly nasty thing in the Central Valley. There's the scoop on it, a fungus-caused infection. So that could be bad. Power lines. Here's the easy one. Stay away from power lines. Keep your tools away from power lines. I don't know if the Caltrans website still has the power line safety training that I put together when I was chief of training in headquarters, but there's a PDF of it. It's all scripted, so it can be done any way you want to do it. If you know somebody at Caltrans, or if you don't, if you want that training, get a hold of me. Some way we'll find that training for you if it's not already available.
I will say that was kind of the beginning portion of Tony's presentation was about a surveyor getting electrocuted using a GPS rod. So he does want to present his safety as well. So we'll figure out another time later on, but that was kind of the starting point for Dr. Nettleman stuff.
Yeah, Tony and I talked about that, and I think it was around 2009, 2008 or 9, that one of our surveyors for Caltrans was using a 25-foot extendable aluminum rod for a prism, doing a topo on the side of a slope, and he slid the rod up through an oak tree canopy and didn't see the 12.5 kV distribution line, and he was electrocuted. He did not die, but he was very seriously injured, spent months in the hospital and in rehab. And you know, if you walk through the office and you scuff your shoes on the ground and you touch him with your finger and give him a little static electric shock, he jumps about 8 feet now. But you know, it's serious. I think Tony's case, the guy was killed.
Yeah.
And you know, you don't want that.
Sean in the chat brings up a good point that we have Amtrak contractor safety training in the eastern states, which is an annual requirement. So yeah, think about just all the railroad lines and surveying around that, and all the overhead power that runs those. So
yeah, overhead power for those too. The light rail system in Sacramento is all overhead power lines, and they're low. They're, man, they seem like if you had a 8-foot rod, you might be able to contact them if you raised it just overhead, just, you know, like so that your instrument person could see you, right? Hold the rod up high and bring it down. Yeah. Railroad training. If you're going to be working near a railroad, get the training. And you're going to probably need a permit to work in the railroad right of way. And you'll probably also need railroad staff on your team as lookouts. So trains will sneak up on you. The Doppler effect is amazing. You really don't hear them until they are close to you when they're doing 70 miles an hour or so. How about lifting objects? It's always a good thing to remember. Got to do your lifting techniques properly. Does anybody out there use the old Leica scan station or scan station 2? I think they weighed about 45 pounds. I was working with a couple of postdoctoral researchers from UC Davis, and they went to, there was 2 guys, and they were kind of struggling to lift the scan station out of the box, out of the crate to put it up on the tripod. And I just said, hey guys, let me help you with that. And I reached down and grabbed a hold of it with one arm and lifted that scan station up in one movement up to the top of the tripod and put the tripod screw in the base of it and stepped back. And these 2 postdoc researchers were looking at me like Surveyor Superman or something, right? Because I lifted this thing one-handed. They didn't realize I couldn't move my arm for like the next 3 hours. Yeah. So don't overlift things. Safety around people. Treat people respectfully. If you're in the presence of in the area of like a shooting range, make your presence known. Make your presence known to just about any time you're out. But if you're near a shooting range, contact the range safety officer. Watch out for homeless encampments. You can have lots of problems around those. Mental health, drug addictions. So, you know, use needles on the ground, hazardous waste, and plenty of other problems there. And of course, criminal element with, shall we say, agricultural plots, with either armed guards or traps, booby traps set out in the field. You also have the risk of vandalism, theft, robbery, assault from people that you may encounter in your day-to-day work out there. So you may have to guard your equipment. I prefer this equipment when I'm guarding equipment. So that's kind of a fast look at a bunch of different issues, and hopefully that raised your awareness on those things. But the questions that we got to take away from this are, how do we improve in both the big picture and the day by day? So like these are critical things that we have to recognize, that what we're doing can be improved. The reason we can improve those things is because if you're here, you probably have an interest in improving the situation. There's got to be some training. There's got to be some awareness. At some point, we all probably got the training on don't drop equipment, but are we getting safety training, whether it was in our college curriculums or at our workplaces? It takes a concerted effort, and everybody has to buy into it. On a daily basis, you think safety all the time. Always use your PPE and make a daily habit of improving safety. On a personal level, incorporate safety into all the meetings, right? At California Department of Water Resources a number of years ago, they lost, I think it was two divers that were scuba divers inspecting something, and a pump got turned on, and these guys ended up getting trapped, and I believe they drowned. Because of that, DWR did a big safety stand down. And after that, they started doing a safety moment at the beginning of every meeting they had. If it was a project development team to talk about a new dam or a new pump station or a acquisition of right-of-way for a water line, somebody had to have a safety topic and talk for up to 1 minute on that, just to keep safety at the forefront of everyone's mind. So safety is everyone's responsibility, but who does your safety matter the most to? Probably to yourself or your family. So it's your responsibility to do what you can to protect yourself, to make yourself as safe as possible and maintain a safe attitude. All the things that are required for PPE, if you're at a higher level in a corporation or an organization of some sort, it's up to you to establish the culture of safety. policies, goals, plans for the safety culture. Everyone's in the same boat, establishing those goals and objectives. Create a process that holds everyone accountable for being visibly involved, especially managers and supervisors. They're the leaders for positive change. And you need to be able to provide different options for your employees to bring their safety concerns or issues into the light. There should be a chain of command that makes sure that supervisors are responsive for that kind of thing. Define responsibilities, share vision, enforce accountability, and have multiple options to raise concerns. And with that, if you're a supervisor with staff that refuses to work safely, get rid of them. If you have a coworker who works unsafely, talk to them and to the supervisor. If you have a supervisor who wants you to work unsafely, talk to the supervisor. If you don't get any traction with them, talk to somebody else, whether that's another supervisor, company safety officer, or the company president. If you still are not satisfied, go to work somewhere else. There are plenty of jobs out there. Okay. Establishing that culture of safety is about reporting, building and rebuilding, if necessary, the investigation system, and building trust. Employees have to recognize and be educated upon the importance of reporting injuries, even first aids and near misses. Today's near miss could be tomorrow's fatal if somebody doesn't say something and spread the word. As managers and company owners, if you do this, you're going to have an increase in incidents in your reporting system if your system is currently under-reporting. Eventually, it should level off, and it should decline if you're really supporting safety. What you really are looking for is not placing blame, but getting to the root cause of accidents and incidents. And when things start to change in the workplace, you really got to celebrate that. And you can't let it get stale. You have to come back and revisit that safety training. Back when I was in the field in San Diego County for Caltrans District 11, we reached a milestone of 1 million man-hours of no lost time injuries for a team of 6 4-man field crews working alongside live traffic on the freeway system in San Diego and Imperial counties. Now, that may not really mean anything to some of you, but Trent is running the company, and some of the others, George and Jerry, who have been around the world doing this kind of work. To go 1 million man hours without a lost time injury is pretty significant. And at the same time, well, at a later date, as technology has improved, but sometimes the bureaucracy hasn't, you'd be absolutely amazed to find out how much bureaucracy and cow dung we had to go through to get backup cameras installed on our survey trucks so we wouldn't run over anybody on a job site backing up, or even in the yard backing up. Craziness. Places to get resources for tailgate safety meetings. CLSA has a tailgate safety meeting guide. Hold a safety meeting before going to every new project, or every 10 working days. CLSA members could get this PDF for free. You can also purchase printed versions. And sometime in the near future, I'll be working with Dr. Tony Nettleman to flesh out Tony's safety presentations. It could be a series of weekly snippets going into a little bit more detail on many of the subjects we touched on tonight, or a full 8-hour-long class. It would be like an annual safety training class. So keep your eyes peeled for those. Other training opportunities are these. Who is first aid trained on your survey crews, Trent? Is it your party chief?
Yeah, typically. I mean, part of that also in Nevada, we're required to have a OSHA 10 and OSHA 30s.
Oh, good.
So yeah, there's a little bit of all that together, mixed into all that kind of stuff. So that started in Nevada in like 2009. So anybody working, and they got to go through it every 5 years. So
yeah, one of the things that I've heard is, well, our party chiefs are trained on first aid. And my question was, what if it's your party chief that gets injured? And then your organization or your company should have you should have an understanding of what do you do after you give that first aid? Who do you call, right? And how do you let them know? Will legislative changes improve safety? If so, which ones do you suggest? I think this is a good one. Mandate common sense. Right? We already mentioned California law requiring water for field work. Maybe revising our subdivision map act to either prohibit or discourage, or at least make centerline monuments optional in major roadways, and force counties to change their monumentation requirements. Might still be acceptable in residential streets. Any other ideas on that? Right? Your professional association is your connection to your state legislature, and through your partnerships with NSPS to the national level. So come up with other ideas and share them. In the end, does your talk match your walk? If we're only talking about safety, we're not doing anything about it, we're wasting our breath and we're risking people's lives. It's a mindset. So be aware of the hazards around you. Focus on your task at hand. Have the strength to do the right thing. And have the patience to do things correctly every time. Take responsibility for a safe work environment and think before you act. Accidents aren't the result of bad luck. Mostly they're not. Usually they occur when somebody decides, either consciously or unconsciously, to take a chance. If safety isn't your first thought, it might be your last. And that's what I've got for you tonight. Here's a bunch of other links to safety information. And that concludes my presentation for the night. I've probably gone over, but of course I left my phone where I couldn't see it, so I'm not sure
No, you did good. It's only
how
5:35.
badly we did here.
You're good. It's 5:35, and Jerry's got his hand up. So,
Hi,
Jerry,
Jerry.
Hi, until we start to integrate it as part of the educational experience and not just an add-on type of thing, safety is always going to be an issue, particularly with younger people, younger students who think they're invincible. We at UW Platteville here in the engineering program, the very first semester, the students take an introduction to infrastructure class, where they have to go around and inspect different types of infrastructure and write up reports and do that type of thing. One of the things that they learn right off the bat is they have to write a safety management plan, and they have to submit that for review by their instructors before they go out in the field. They have to identify the safety equipment they have to take with them, you know, signage and all this kind of stuff, in addition to what is it they're going to be doing out there. So from that point forward, at any time in any of the classes in engineering that they do, where they have to go and do a field excursion, they have to file a safety management plan with their instructor. So it becomes a part of the process in the engineering education. The thing you said about safety minute in our senior design class, we adopted that a number of years ago, was we had a weekly meeting with our design teams, and we had them kick it off with a safety minute at the beginning of each meeting that we had with them, and would have them talk about stuff like that. So it's got to become a part of the education. And I tell you how many times I've had students show up to a survey lab wearing flip-flops, that I will go over there and I'll drop a plumb bob on their toes just to let them know that when I tell them to wear hard-toed enclosed shoes, there's a reason why we do that, why we wear long pants and, you know, with bugs and that type of thing. But you have to make that a part of the educational process, that later on, it's just something you do second nature. It's like anything else you do in surveying. It becomes a part of the process that you're working through.
100%, Jerry. That was one of the things that when I interviewed to teach it at Southwestern College, interviewed with the dean, I was already anointed to become the new guy coming in. But the dean said, well, what are you gonna, you know, you got the previous instructor's syllabus, what are you gonna do differently? And I said, there's nothing in the syllabus that addresses safety at all. And so a portion of this class is going to address safety. And that was, at that point, it was like, welcome aboard. You know, that was the like there were a few questions before that, and once I hit that one, said, sounds great. You're welcome aboard, you know. You can't argue against safety. And if you're arguing about safety with somebody higher up, then you should be looking for a new place to work. So, geez, we got a lot of chats, didn't we?
Yeah, there was a few things. George, I was curious, you early on you talked about the sun burning your eyes. And that was a
Yes.
new one for me.
Trent, when you get to some place where you have good lighting in a mirror, look and see if you don't have a slight red stripe on the white part of your eyes.
Right.
I know I do.
My experience happened back in the early 70s up at Lake Tahoe. We were doing a huge topo up there for a potential subdivision, which never happened. But at any rate, I was keeping notes for a day, and just the sunlight reflecting off the white pages of the notebook sunburned my eyes. So I missed 2 weeks worth of work.
That's crazy, George.
Yeah, we lost. Oh, and he's gone. Oh, nope, you're back, George. You're muted now.
Anyway, I missed 2 weeks worth of work.
Wow.
And ended up with some scars on the retina in the back of my eyes, which fortunately have not adversely affected my vision to this day, which I consider very lucky.
Mm-hmm.
And my eye doctors are amazed at that. But they're looking at those now closely. They watch them every year because those scars could develop cancer. So I'm not excited about that. But what I will say is wear some sunglasses. It's not that doggone hard. And, you know, I was young. I was my early 30s,
yep,
or late 20s, probably there. I'm not going to do the math, but it took a small period of time to acquire that injury, and it would have been so simply avoided with just a pair of sunglasses. And so it's something to think about. You know, the time we spend writing on paper in the sunlight, the time we spend looking through telescopes in the sunlight. I mean, it's hard to wear sunglasses looking through a telescope, but with the stuff we use today, who has a telescope? It's just so simple to avoid that situation and save yourself a lot of stress in the future.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'd just never heard anybody sunburning their eyes, so I was curious about that a little bit more. But one of the other ones, Rob, we've done kind of been a sub consultant to Stantec a few times, and one of their things that was really cool is they do JHA's, job hazard analysis, and you got to do one of those for every sheet, which is the nearest hospital, the routes out. I mean, Stantec is serious about their safety, but they got some pretty cool things in place that even as a sub that you need to help fill out and do that kind of stuff with. So
yeah, that's excellent.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty cool. Yeah, sunglasses even make safety glasses, right? So even if they're reading prescriptions, there you go. Yep. Well, very cool. Does anybody have any more questions? Or
you can get just for another note, you can get safety glasses that are approved as safety glasses that are sunglasses, and I wear them. I don't leave the house without sunglasses on. It's just that simple. I can't afford not to do that now. My eyes are very sensitive to light, and it's not a hassle. It's something that's easily done. I can walk outside, and if I don't have my sunglasses, I'm doing a U-turn in about half a second.
yeah, exactly.
Thanks. Amy's comment was that
Mhm.
their VSP covers that as well. And mine did at Caltrans for many years as well.
Just another reason to charge more for a survey, right? Take the time, do it right, safety behind it, whatever
I
it
like
takes.
the way
Yeah.
you're thinking, Martina.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's awesome. Great stuff. Great job, Rob. I know I missed the last one, and which is why it didn't end up getting recorded. So I'm glad we were able to do a redo. And then we'll definitely hit up Tony to kind of talk about his when you guys get that going as well. So
Well, great seeing all the ladies attending these too.
Yeah.
That's neat to see. We need more of their help in this profession, for
Definitely.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're generally smarter than we are, particularly when it comes to, are you sure you want to do that way?
Well, and they're also way more organized.
Yeah.
I think it was Mr. Fitting for you, Rob, since we started off the first one together that that you got to do number 100. So
That's
was
pretty
kinda
cool.
That was cool.
Amazing.
Yep, exactly. Amazing feat. So I love it. Well, if nobody has anything else, I appreciate it as always, Rob. Great stuff. Great interaction with everybody this week.
Great job,
Thanks
Rob.
for everybody showing up. I hope I didn't kill you off with boredom. That's a definite safety violation, but
That's awesome. Awesome. All right, everybody. Have a good week.
All right.
Hopefully see you Wisdom Wednesdays, chapter 13. So
take care, everybody.
all right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye guys.
Bye.